All right, so I am Fortune Effiong. I am the co-founder of the African Committee for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. I also work with Author Aid. I work as the National Secretary of Author in Nigeria, and I'm equally the co-founder and director for research of TorahSIF. So today we'll be looking at grant writing. We'll be looking at what grant writing is. We'll be looking at how to prepare a grant proposal. I'll be sharing some tips, okay, and then some funding sources. So while the webinar is going on, I really want you to introduce yourself in the chat box if you've not done that already. Maybe you could introduce your name and the country you're joining us from, or whatever you're studying or practicing. Thank you. And I'll be happy if you could drop your questions in the chat box. I think Waziri or Princess would put them together and then we get them at the end of the session or at intervals. So what is grant writing? It's a process of making a written financial request to a grant making body. So you have to underline the word written, right? Because more often than not, most grant calls would require some sort of written proposal, right? Even if some may require some sort of interview later, like oral presentation, the first point of contact between you and the grant making body is always a written document, more often than not. I think almost all the grant calls will always need some kind of writing. So the written document is called a grant proposal. So why do you need a grant? Have you asked yourself this very important question? So there are three main reasons why you may need a grant. The first might be to fund your research idea. Let's say you have this research idea and you feel that you need some sort of funding support to carry out the project. So of course you will need a research grant. Maybe it's your final year thesis in school or your master's or your PhD thesis. So you also need grants for social impacts initiatives. So if you're running any social impact initiative, maybe you are promoting public health education in your community, maybe you're a climate change activist, maybe you're a sexual and reproductive health rights activist, maybe you have a project you want to organize, you have a project you want to initiate, then of course you might need some sort of funding support. So if you want to travel for a conference, maybe the Conference of Public Health in Africa coming up in November, then and you cannot sponsor yourself, or your institution or your organization cannot support you, then you might look for a grant. Yeah, mommy. All right, so let's look at the next chapter of this webinar, preparing a grant proposal. What are the things to consider? So to prepare a grant proposal, there are three phases that we should prepare for, okay? The pre-writing phase, the writing phase, and the post-writing phase. So the pre-writing phase is essentially everything that you do before you see a grant opportunity, before the grant call, or before you get to put your proposal together. And there are essentially four main things you might want to put together before writing your grant proposal, or even before seeing a grant call. The first is building a visible and measurable track record, and emphasis on visible and measurable. So for example, you want to apply for a research grant, right? You should have publications. Essentially, you should have publications. You should have published in high impact journals, and maybe you should have published original researches or maybe reviews and so on and so forth. So these are visible and they are equally measurable records. They are available in your OCD account and your Google Scholar, so someone can see that, yes, this is what you are doing. If you are applying, or if you want to apply for a social impact grant, social impact is like anything you do to make your community better. Like I was saying, you're climate change activists, you are youth activists, whatever, all those ones are categorized as social impact activities. My social impact activity is building research capacity. Like one of it is what I'm doing now, training, mentorship, and so on and so forth. So I do this through my organizations. So by building a visible and measurable track record, you should have been doing activities already. So if you are a climate change activist, even before applying for this grant, it's expected that you've been doing little things already, and they are visible in the sense that you have a dedicated social media platform that you share some of your work, some of your achievements. So the next thing is develop your writing skills. I think writing is a basic, necessary, and essential 21st century skill. Yeah, you can underline that. Basic, necessary, and essential 21st century skill. So I feel that anyone who is anyone in the 21st century who is in pursuit of anything should have basic writing skills, especially for we young people. Because if you're going to be a founder, a co-founder, whatever, if you're going to push anything, you can't dodge from writing. You definitely have to write something. And then yes, it's true, you can hire somebody to be writing for you, but I think there are limitations to that. There are certain things that you rather put it down by yourself. So that's why writing is an essential 21st century skill. So it's not just for those in the academia, it's not just for researchers, right? It's not for freelance writers alone. Writing is something that now concerns everybody. So you should have developed your writing skills. And so the next thing is to have an incubated idea. For example, if the research project, a research grant you're targeting, you should have had an idea before in your mind before applying for that grant. For example, before I applied for the RSTMH grant, I had been engaging I'd been engaging the idea for months. And like, my research interest is universal health coverage. So specifically, I've been really interested in health financing because I realized that it's a key component of achieving universal health coverage. So the idea has been in my mind for months, long before I even submitted my proposal for the RSTMH. And in fact, I think I recently published a paper on that. It's something I was working before the RSTMH this thing came. So when the RSTMH call came, I felt, okay, this is an opportunity for me to research more or do some primary research into health financing. And specifically, I was interested in community health financing because I've always been fascinated by community approaches to achieving the sustainable development goals. So you should have an idea that is in your mind. It's easier for you to succeed with an idea that you've been incubating than one that you're just developing because you've seen a grant call. So when the RSTMH grant call came, I had two options. I was either going to submit a proposal for this idea that was in my mind, this community health insurance scheme, or I was going to bring any idea at all for the RSTMH grants. I wasn't very sure if RSTMH would fund CBHIS, that's community-based insurance project. So I'd written to them to be sure that it's something they can fund, because I was reasoning that if it's not something they can fund, then I have to change to other things like malaria or NTDs that they clearly stated in their website. So the next thing is you have to follow relevant networks, and we'll talk more about this later. So you are in the you are in the writing phase now. After the grant score, sorry, this is an error. You are in the writing phase after the grant score. So there are five things that you might want to put into consideration. Just if you have any question, just put in the chat box. At some point, I'll take questions for 5 minutes before I continue. So the first thing you have to consider is the scope, right? Let's talk about social impact grants. If your social impact initiative is climate change, and then they are calling for proposal to support sexual and reproductive health, then of course you cannot submit a proposal for that. For example, if my social impact initiative is public health education, then I may not suit into a call for sexual and reproductive health. So that's essentially how it works. The grant management body, they have their priorities, and they have the things they want to fund. So of course, if it's not in their thematic areas, because they are also funded by others, right? So they probably presented the areas they want to fund, right? So for example, Bill Gates mostly funds global health. So you see, he pumps a lot of money into malaria and so on and so forth. So people that are receiving grants from Bill Gates, they most likely want to fund this kind of initiative. So that's essentially how it works. So if for instance, the proposal is for non-neglected tropical diseases and you have a malaria idea, then be rest assured that that call is not for you. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time. So the next thing you might want to consider is expertise and eligibility. Do I have the expertise? What kind of persons are they looking for? Because most research grants, for example, sorry, let me take a break and look at my chat box. So I'll be sure that, okay. Just want to be sure that you're following. All right, so for example, most research grants might be open for PhD students, and you're an undergrad, a master's student, master's graduate, and you're really looking for these particular funding opportunities. There are two things you can do. You might either forgo it and maybe wait for your time or look for other opportunities. The other thing you can do is for you to collaborate with somebody who is a PhD holder, somebody who has a PhD, or somebody who has a master's degree, depending on the specifications of the grant. Or if the grant is for people in Rwanda and you're a Nigerian, right? You could collaborate with a friend in Rwanda. That's why it's very important you have good networks, okay? If it's in Cameroon, you collaborate with someone in Cameroon. But then it's not as easy as I'm saying it, because you should have some sort of memorandum of understanding, because the idea might be your own and you might even be doing most of the work. So it's something you have to agree between or within yourselves and sort of do a formal or informal memorandum of understanding of how you spend the money or how you do everything, because the person will be receiving the grants with his name, but this is your idea and this is you doing all the work. So you have to be very careful when you're doing that. And maybe you might want to do it with somebody that you trust very well and somebody that is a friend. So you might also consider if you have the capacity to do this particular thing, because there are grants that are for very big projects, okay? Most times they don't fund individuals, they fund institutions. So if you're an individual and you're submitting for that kind of call, then you might be wasting your time. Because they fund institutions, because institutions definitely have, they believe institutions have everything necessary to do that, to initiate that project. So consider the deadline. Do you have enough time to rally your team? Do you have enough time to put something down? Do you have enough time to review and so on and so forth? Do you have enough time to ask questions? Okay. The next thing is, what are the requirements? Because the requirement for a grant call differs, right? Some may request recommendation letter from your head of department. Some may request from any institution you're affiliated to. Some may request some sort of statement of purpose and so on and so forth. So you have to be sure what are they requiring? Is it something I can get? For example, you're no more connected to your head of department. You then getting a recommendation letter for him or her might not really be feasible. So you have to consider those things too. Other information like I said, statement of purpose and many other things we'll see as we keep going. Before I continue, I want to be sure you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So can I take just one question for the pre-writing phase? Sorry, we're correct. It's a pre-writing phase. Can I take one question?
I think there's already one question in the chat session.
Okay, how do we know organizations that offer grants and on what platforms can we follow? Awesome. This is the last part of our webinar for today, so we'll take that later. We'll continue. So these are the essential elements of a grant proposal. So it differs on funding, it differs on what kind of grant you're applying for. Remember, you apply for grant for 3 things, right? For research, for social impact, and for what? For travel. So this is not cast and concrete. This is flexible, and it depends on the people that the funders and what they want. So the first thing that you may be requested to present is a problem statement. Some will call it statement of need or background information. We'll talk a little more about it soon. Next thing is project description, the methods, the timeline, expected outcome. Then another important thing is the budget breakdown. Then your referees, and then additional information like supporting documents, links, and so on and so forth. By the way, before we continue, there is one little exercise or very important exercise I want us to do, and that is for you to post on the chat box any grant opportunity that you have seen. Maybe you're preparing to submit for it, or you're planning, or you just saw it recently. Can you share it in the chat box or in the group, whichever one is comfortable for you? That is one of the essence of today's webinar. Please share it in the chat box. I'll be checking the chat box time to time. Thank you. So the background should contain the problem you are addressing. Tell us how it's true. For example,
sorry, sir. Sorry. Before you go on, let me just quickly mention that the attendance link will also be dropped in the chat box. So anybody that is going to fill attendance for today should look out for it in the comments, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So for example, when I applied for the RSTMH grant, I sort of I presented the problem. The problem I presented was universal health coverage, right? It's a challenge. Is among the SDGs, SDG 3.8. So I showed that Nigeria is far away from achieving universal health coverage, right? Then I showed how community approaches are ways we can achieve universal health coverage or advance universal health coverage in Nigeria. And then specifically, I talked about health financing and how very, very important or significant health financing is in the context of universal health coverage. So this is essentially what you have to do in your background section. Tell us the problem you are addressing. It could be poverty, it could be literacy, it could be gender-based violence, it could be malaria. So just tell us the problem, give us some sort of background knowledge, and tell us how it is true, because it's not enough just tell us the problem. You might want to tell us how it's true. This problem you're saying, show us it's true. So for me, I just cited articles that, I talked about universal health coverage and the problems of health financing in Nigeria. So that was enough for me. It might be different for you. You might have to cite a newspaper publication or share pictures or whatever. That's not what you do in your background. You don't share the pictures anyway. You tell us how it's important. Why is this problem an important? Why is it important for us to address this particular problem at this particular time? So for research grants, you might be asked to, state your research questions in the background section. So I want to ask a question. Is it necessary to cite consulted sources in your background? Let's say you're not, whether it's a research or a social impact grant you're applying for, is it necessary to cite consulted sources, or is it even necessary to even consult any source at all? So I'll just give us 1 or 2 minutes to engage. Okay, I think it is. So, okay. Notice that I'm not just talking about research, right? Research or academia, you definitely have to cite. I'm talking about like social impact project, like you're doing a project to reduce period poverty. Maybe you're going to secondary schools to give girls sexual health education, and you're preparing a background. Do you need to cite it? Or do you need to cite any literature? Okay, so I think everybody's saying, yeah, very necessary. Okay, someone says no. Actually, it's important to cite. I would show you later that your grant writing should be a mix of scholarly and critical thinking. So aside from the fact that you're an advocate, you should also show that you are a scholar. You've gone to the archives or gone to the library, and then you've checked what has been done, because that is very important. And you're drawing a particular gap. That's something you should emphasize in your introduction. Show us the gap that you are feeling. For example, for my RSTMH grant, the gap was simple: to assess the challenges, implementation challenges, and coverage of community-based health insurance schemes. This is something that has not been done on that particular scale before. I say on that particular scale because it was done in Oyo State, in some communities in Oyo State, wasn't done in other states. So I show, okay, look, this is very important. As important as this thing is, it has not been done in other states. So that is something you have to do. Because nobody wants to fund anything, right? We want to fund a problem, want something that is worth funding. So you have to show us that this is truly a problem, nobody's doing it, this is a gap you are filling, and so on and so forth. Or this is how you are different from other interventions. So let's go to the next section, description. This is where you state your methodology, your proposed solution. So you have to tell us what makes this thing innovative and scalable. This is what I chipped in before. I showed that this research has not been done before. Even if it was done in a small scale, it has not been done on the large scale, which I want to do it, okay? So you have to tell us the expected outcome. At the end of the 6 or 3 months or 1 year, what will we be looking at, right? So will we have a research that is published? Will we have health campaigns? Will we have, sometimes you have to be a lot more specific. You can say we'll train 2,000 researchers on research writing. You could say we will teach 500 secondary school students on sexual health. Okay, maybe we can share menstrual pads to 500 girls in secondary school. So you have to state these outcomes very clearly. And then you have to give us a timeline. Okay, how long will this project cover? And that's very important, because most grants calls, they have a timeline. They have a timeline they want you to cover that project. For example, I think RSTMH is 1 year. So if you cannot cover a project in 1 year, you have to give a very strong justification to why it cannot be covered in 1 year. Then you might also want to state your limitations. What do you think is anticipated limitation? What do you think you're not too sure? For example, if it's research, if it's research, I could state limitations for that particular study. You know, studies have limitations, research projects have limitations. So stating the limitation for that particular study, maybe these projects will not be done on so and so, this research will not be done. Just, I think you've had basic research training, so you already understand how a research limitation should look like. But then for a social impact project, nothing is coming to my mind right now, but it's your field. So you know potential limitations, you might want to state that. But if the grant team has not requested for this, okay, then you may choose not to state it unless you think it's very important. So you have to be clear, and then your goal or your plan should be SMART, right? So can somebody give me the acronym of SMART in the chat box, please? Now, I will not say don't be ambitious. I will say don't be over ambitious, because the truth is most grants calls or most grant managers, they kind of always fund ambitious project. That's a little secret that you have to learn. So somehow you have to try and make your projects ambitious, but not over ambitious, because they like to fund sometimes they like to fund the ambitious project. So don't be too ambitious, because if you are too ambitious, then you're telling us that you remember one of the goals is being realistic. So if you are too ambitious, then you are not realistic. Both cannot go together. So feel free to adopt an already established method or protocol. Like I told you, my research on community-based health insurance scheme for RSTMH was done already. I even know the person who conducted the study. I recently connected with them. It was done in Oyo State, I think few communities in Oyo State. So I just came with the idea of making it bigger, going into other communities. So I think that's one of that was a good one, because it gives your grant management team confidence that, okay, because a method is already, then it's achievable, you know, than coming up with something that is essentially coming from nowhere. Okay, somebody has responded. The goal should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. All right, that's awesome. So budget, very important. Tell us how you use grant funds, and then list all the items with associated costs. If you're traveling, if you are paying staffs, if you're purchasing anything, you have to list them and sort of give a justification. Now, I want to suggest that you are very honest with this, because if you assume that these people that are giving these grants, they are diasporans, right? They are people from the UK, and they will not know the price of palm oil in Nigeria. It will shock you, because what these people do is that they call for peer reviewers all over the world. So for example, RSTMH have global assessors all over the world, and they have a good representation of Africans, I mean, especially Nigerians there. So if you think that it's UK person that will review, that's not correct. Most likely your proposal will fall in the hands or on the table of a Nigerian. And if it's somebody that's lived in Nigeria, he knows what 10,000 Naira means. He knows what 10,000 Naira can purchase. So you have to try and be, you can overestimate a little. Yes, it's correct to overestimate, maybe because you are suspecting fluctuation in prices, or you're not very sure. So you can overestimate a little, but don't overestimate too much. So for example, if you're saying you want to buy, you want to transport yourself from Calabar to Lagos, and then you're saying it's 300,000. Of course, that's too much. Even a flight is not up to, it's not up to 300,000. So yeah, probably it's not even up to 100,000 unless you are booking an urgent flight. So you have to try and be very honest, overestimate a little, and never underestimate. If you underestimate, you shoot yourself in the leg, because you are telling us that, or you're telling the grantors you are going to do this and do this and do this, and then you're presenting a proposal that is below what you need, right? Maybe because you are afraid that if I ask too much, you'll not give me, or I don't want to bother them too much. If you don't want to bother them too much, then cut your quotes according to the budget you're presenting. Otherwise, if you present a very ambitious proposal with a very small money, number one, it's a red flag. It's a red flag, because if they spot out that this proposal is too ambitious and you've not stated where you get the remaining funds from, then it's a red flag. They might likely flag you danger, and they probably will not fund you. And the other thing is that if they essentially fund you, where will you get the money to do it, right? And if you cannot do what you said you will do, that is also a problem, because at the end of a grant period, you'll be requested to submit a kind of report with evidence, receipt, and everything. Yeah, so that's something important. Keep your receipt, because at the end, you'll be requested to file the receipt. So try and be very clear with your budget, be clear and specific. You know, they usually, like I think RSTMH has a format where they want you to report the budget. But I think other grant calls will have a format. So if you don't have, then just use any basic reporting formats. So what I want to ask now is, should you include remuneration or personal time? You know what's a remuneration? That's money. You're not buying anything. You're not paying anybody. It's just personal money, personal time money, or sometimes we call it remuneration. So you answer that one first. Should you include this in your budget item? I'm looking at the chat box now for your response. Okay, God safe says yes. So somebody says no, or call him Maureen. Oh, she's even using 3. Said no, yes. Okay, I'm just going to take one response. If you say yes, can you tell us, you can unmute yourself. Can you tell us why you should include it? And if you say no, can you tell us why you should not include? Just one person, please.
Okay, let me say why I said no. Shall I go on?
Oh, yes, please. But few seconds.
Okay. I think they don't have, it's not necessary. They don't have to know how much I have. Like, I want them to give me money for my research proposal. I want them to use their own. It's very clear. I do not have enough. So you don't have to know how much I have.
Okay.
Because then I couldn't start telling me that.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you. Sorry. Just a sec. I want to clarify. Personal time or remuneration is a budget item. While you're listing your budget, you're listing these things that you'd buy. And then one of the budget items is personal time. That's, you're telling them that this is the money I will allocate for myself. I'm not buying anything. It's not a direct cost. So that's what it means. So she can still answer, or any other person can answer, please. Okay, maybe you can answer that later, or maybe in the chat box. Just prepare a message and saying why you think you should include or why you should not. And answer the second question, should you include miscellaneous? I'm waiting for it in the chat box. I'll come back to answering these questions. So the next thing is your referees. Know your referee. So because this person is Harvard professor or a professor in Stanford, you think it's very important that you include him, because it's going to boost your chances of getting the grant. It depends, right? The person should know you very well. You should know the person too very well. And the person should be able to write about you. The person should know what you are doing. It's not enough for a person to know you. Maybe it's your uncle, but he doesn't know the kind of project that you do. He doesn't know that you're a sexual and reproductive health activist. Then it's not a good person to refer you, right? So you have to use somebody that knows what you're doing, the activities you're doing, somebody that probably has mentored you in research or whatever. So these are the kind of persons you can use as referees. It could be your head of department. Most times, this is just a secret. Don't be afraid of using your head of department because, in quotes, they are not as global as you would have expected, or you think they are not global. They are not on LinkedIn and have powerful profiles online. Don't travel conferences. They are not like all these high-income countries professors. One truth is that your grant management team, they always try to, most of these foreign organizations, they always try to link with our local institutions, and they are very much interested with connecting with our head of departments, our deans, and so on and so forth. So putting your head of department or your dean as your referee is an extra boost for you, because number one, it gives them some sort of security that they have somebody to hold accountable, and it gives them an opportunity to connect with our local heads. And this is something that they take very important. So don't use somebody that you think you must have had a strained relationship with recently, or whenever maybe you have a fight with your HOD time ago, or your dean, or whoever, your mentor. It might not be smart for you to use a person as a referee unless you're very sure that it is not going to risk your chances of getting selected, because whatever the person says is very, very important. Most grants calls, you will not see what your referee is writing. You will not see what they have submitted. So they can even tell you, prepare a proposal, I'll submit, prepare the letter, I'll submit for you. But when you give the letter to them, they can manipulate it to whatever they like. So it's very important that you work with people that you're sure that, to be honest, to say good things about you. It's a reality. Even if you're a bad person, or even if you've not been good to that person, you can work with that person, because you have to work with somebody who would say good things about you. All right, so other information, supporting documents, your LinkedIn profile, very important. I cannot emphasize it enough, especially for social impact projects. For research project or for research grants, your OSCE, your Google Scholar already tells you publications and citations, right? And where you're publishing. So that's enough. But if you're doing a social impact grants, if you're submitting for a social impact activity like sexual and reproductive health, okay? You need to have a proof, right? Maybe the pictures of what you have been doing before, uploaded on your LinkedIn profile or your page, or maybe in a Google Drive, there has to be something to support your claims that you're a sexual and reproductive health advocate, or you're a climate change advocate. Now, it's very important you tell us how, or tell them how the opportunity will further your career. It's not something you should joke with, because you might do very well in other sections, but then you cannot show them how this thing connects your 5 or 10 years goals. I cannot show them how getting this grant is important. You completely screw up, in this particular section, then that might be a problem. Okay, so I'll just break here and just attend to some questions in the chat box. Remember, I said if you have any grants call that you've seen, just share with us. Only one person shared Aspire Change Grant, and that's very stingy of you. You have grant opportunities, you don't want to share with others. It's not good, it's not fair. Don't mind me. But please, if you have any grant opportunities, share it with us here, or share it in the chat box. So let me read. This is a response to my question, okay? Whether we should include remuneration or personal time. Jibril Adamu, yes, time is also part of investment. The grantor will therefore know what you know, that you know what you're doing. The time when expended will have been used for another financial gain. So important remuneration is important. What could be done if you're going to use funds greater than this in grant proposal, for instance? Is it a question? No, I want to take questions later. You have a writing template? No, this is a question. No, I think it should not stand as an item, but come in the miscellaneous. Okay. So Jibril Adamu, you are correct. Or let me say I agree with Gabriel, time is a resource, however you put it. So if you're buying petrol, if you're buying whatever, what makes you think you cannot pay for time? For instance, if you pay school fees, right? You're not really buying a tangible something, you're paying your lecturers for their time. So it's not something you should look down on. Yes, it to tell the grantors that you understand what you're doing, like Adamu has said. It if it shows him that you be committed to that thing, because if you are paying yourself for something, then you be committed to it. But if you not allocate any time, any money for that, it means okay, you are telling us you want to do this voluntary. We are like, okay, are you sure? So it's something like that. You have to allocate money. It's a point of view. You have to allocate money for your personal time. That's very important. And then for miscellaneous, we have what we call reasonable contingencies. Some may not accept it, but I want to suggest, put your miscellaneous, if they don't clearly accept miscellaneous, put it somewhere in your budget items, because whether you like it or not, you will experience reasonable contingencies, things you did not expect, inflation and so on and so forth. Those things will happen. So you have to either overestimate some of your budget items a little bit to cater for the miscellaneous. That's if they have not specifically, if they are telling you that they don't accept miscellaneous. Now, if they accept miscellaneous costs, tell them what the miscellaneous is you're anticipating for. Maybe you're anticipating that there will be changes in petrol price, it's going to affect one or two things. Then you have to say, and it should not be too much. Yes. All right. And also know that if you're hiring staffs for your project, you have to pay them too. So that's something you include. So would you pay your staffs and you don't pay yourself? Come on, that's not fair. It's not because you are a social impact advocate and you sleep hungry. Of course, you have to pay yourself. You have to buy clothes and you have to take care of yourself. It's essentially one of the benefits of winning a grant. All right, post-writing phase. The first is editing. You have to give yourself enough time to write so that you have enough time to edit. Make your work more readable, right? And of course, your citation should be correct. And do a lot of proofreading. Eliminate errors and eliminate grammatical errors and spelling errors, right? Because it's a tune-off. It's a tune-off if I'm a reviewer and then I read a proposal that is full of errors and grammatical blunders or punctuation blunders, then it's a big tune-off. So you have to be sure that you've put all these things in check. Next thing is to review. Send it to a friend, send it to a colleague, send it to a mentor, and then submit. I think we are I think this is the second to last stage. The last stage shouldn't take so much of our time. So let me break a little by looking in the chat box for questions. Okay. I would share templates. Templates. No. It will, excuse me. It will depend on the call, and I don't really have any template now, but you can reach out to me privately, but I can't share any templates openly. If you reach out to me privately, then I think I can share something. What could be done if you're going to use funds greater than that is in your proposal? For instance, price of some requirements in your work may increase after submitting your grant. Oh, that's why I said you overestimate a little, right? Because you should anticipate these kind of things. And then if you are, I'm not sure I understand the first question. I think that's all we have in the chat box. So can you just tell us how your experiences with the webinar so far. Just a thumbs up or also anything to describe, just one word to describe the experience so far before we continue. If you're learning anything, just let us know in the chat box. Thank you. I'll just take one or two, then we continue. Explicit. Fire. Thank you also. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, let's look at the general do's and don'ts, right? First is be organized and start early. This cannot be overemphasized. So grant writing is tough. Sometimes you can imagine or you can realize that the time you dedicate to writing a grant proposal might be equivalent to the time you take in writing a secondary article. So you can imagine if you don't start on time and if you don't organize yourself well, then you're likely to make lots and lots of mistakes, and that's a problem. So the second is seek a funding source that matches your goals, okay? If you, like I said before, if you're interested in malaria or you want grant for malaria, then you cannot submit a proposal for a call on NTD. Or if your social impact is research, no, let me not use research. If your social impact is, let's say, sexual and reproductive health, I'll be using it a lot, then you cannot submit a proposal for climate change. So that's essentially how it works. You have to submit to a funding source that matches your goals. Be sure that this organization, this is what they fund, and this call specifically, this is what this call is funding. So you have to show scholarly and critical thinking skills. Like I told you before, because you are a sexual and reproductive health advocate, I'm using sexual and reproductive health too much. Can somebody share his or her social impact activity? Let me use it. I want to change it a bit. I'm talking about sexual and reproductive health and climate change too much. You can share your social impact initiative. So I'll be using it, for example. So if you're a climate change activist, it doesn't mean that you cannot read literatures and see what others are doing, read scientific articles, read newspapers, and you have to show that you are up to date with the current trend, and possibly, as much as possible, try to cite the sources that you have consulted, the sources that you have read. It shows the reviewer, okay, this person knows what he's doing. So you have to show them that you're connecting your learning or your studying experience with your critical thinking. You're not just advocating for advocating's sake. You're also doing some sort of research, and then you're connecting your scholarly experience to the problem that you want to address. That is very important. Career pilot initiative. Oh, awesome. I'm hearing it for the first time. Okay, so show why you need it at this time. This is very important. Grant managers have priorities, organizations have priorities. So they have priorities in terms of time. For example, during the period of COVID-19, you could see the priorities of so many organizations, in fact, so many funding bodies, in fact, the government funds research project, their priorities change to COVID, right? So now getting grant for a project on COVID, it's going to be very difficult, yes. So you have to check that now is the right time for you to submit that kind of proposal. So if you think that now is the right time to submit a proposal for COVID, then you have to show that. Or aside from that, another way I look at this is, for example, you're talking about the number of girls that are depressed, maybe, let me say, number of young people that are experiencing mental health issues, right? Then you can say that from statistics, from research, 10,000, for example, girls have died from mental health issues in Cameroon or in this conflict region. And if we don't address it now, then in the next 2 to 3 years, that number could triple. That's a good justification. You've showed us that, okay, look, we have to do this thing now. Then if it's for research, you can start looking at policies. For example, you know, the malaria vaccine is currently being trialed, right? So if you are interested, you can submit proposal to assess the perception of different demographics, young people, elderly people, and so on and so forth. And you can explain that, look, if we don't address this, when the malaria eventually comes to Nigeria, people will not take it. So this is the right time for us to do KAP studies on malaria vaccine. So I said, don't be too ambitious, but yes, you can be a little bit ambitious. Write clearly and readably. Please don't assume that your reviewer knows that your reviewer is in your field, because sometimes there is scarcity of reviewers. You might be applying for a grant on neuroscience and there is no reviewer in neuroscience. So maybe a physician from a related field, or might not even be a physician, somebody from another field has to review your proposal. And then you're bombarding the person with jargons, and once you just drop one jargon, the person has to go to Google and search. You're stressing the person, and he'll probably stress you too. So you might want to try and keep your proposal jargon free. I'm not sure that you can really impress them with your jargons. I'm not sure of that. So try to make it very clear and readable. Yes, if it's a scientific article, it should be scientific, right? It should have scientific tone, scientific terminologies probably, but not too many jargons, because it might not be read, it might not be reviewed by someone in that field. And try as much as possible to clarify everything that you need to clarify. So for example, period poverty. Don't assume the person should understand what is period poverty. I can say, I don't know. So you have to explain what period poverty is and try to, give enough, as much information as possible. So demonstrate cost effectiveness or value for money. For example, if your project is a project of 5,000, then please don't request for 10,000. Two things you can do: scale up your project to 10,000. If you know you don't have the expertise to scale it to 10,000, then just request for 5,000. Because RSTMH is funding 10,000, for example, doesn't mean you have to. I'm using RSTMH too much. I want to use another organization. So because AuthorHate is funding proposals for 5,000, it doesn't mean you have to submit proposal of 5,000. You can submit lower than that and they accept that, okay? But you cannot submit more than that. You cannot request for 10,000 when your method, your impact is just an impact of 1,000 USD. I don't know if you get it, but if you're organizing a project, funders like to see project that has good impact, and they measure the impact of this project with the money you're requesting. For example, you're telling us you're covering 3 states. It's different from covering just one state. The impact is different. So the budget should also match the impact that you'll be making. So for example, you are impacting 500 persons and you're requesting for 10,000 USD. And the other person is impacting 1,000 persons and is requesting for 5,000. Both of you are in trouble. Is either you that is over requesting, or him that is under requesting. You have to sort yourself out, because the funder will have to look at it critically. And if you were under requesting, red flag. If you're over requesting, then that is almost an automatic loss. So there have to be some sort of proof to back up your need statement, okay? If you say people are dying of poverty in Nigeria, show us pictures. Not pictures from the web, okay? If you're saying a particular community doesn't have good water, show us pictures from that community to prove. Yeah, it depends. If you get pictures from the web for that particular community, Sava, but not pictures from the web from anywhere. That's to be specific for that community. If there is a newspaper publication or an article that is written about that, then that's an extra boost for you. But somehow, it should be a proof of what you're requesting for. Something that backs up your project. So for example, we did a need assessment for systematic review researchers in low and middle income countries. So we are able to say that so and so percentage of LMIC researchers do not have systematic review training. They have never published before and they don't have the training. So that is a survey that we did before we even apply for grants, right? We did the survey, a needs assessment. So that's a proof. We are showing you that, okay, look, we're not just bringing an intervention, we are bringing a targeted intervention, an intervention that is informed by the research that we or other persons did. Please don't exceed the word limit. It shows that you are careless. Some may be automated, you cannot exceed it, but some may not be. You have to be very careful because it's a red flag if you're showing the management funders that you are a careless person. Don't leave important information out. I've emphasized this already. Just try and be as clear and readable as possible. Pay attention to details. Please, you have to read and read and read and reread your call, the call for proposal. I can imagine that when I applied for RSTMH, even after it, I cannot count the number of times I read the proposal because I wanted to be sure that I'm not leaving any small detail out. I'll read it again and again. I'll read it today, I'll read it tomorrow, read it in the morning, read it in the evening. Yes, it's important because sometimes the way the human mind works, you might be reading something, but then you miss very important details, maybe out of excitement or some other kind of emotions. So sometimes when you are calm, you tend to, discern more, you tend to absorb more. So it's important that you spare some other time to study your grants call. Yeah, you can exhaust your word limit. If they say 3,500, none more than that, you can just hit it at 3,500. I always suggest that it should be like 70% of the word limit, right? So if the word limit is 1,500, you try and make it up to 1,000. I'm not saying you must. I just say try, because if it's 1,500 and you're presenting 500, the 500 has to be in quotes damn good. It has to be very good. Otherwise, then it might mean that you did not put in so much work. But it's not always the case. It just depends on what you're writing. So before I come to this one, let's talk about double checking. You have to check and check again. Personally, I always like to review my proposals again and again and again. That's why it's important to give yourself time. I've had the experience of not having time to review my proposal, and I know what it cost me. I've also had the experience of not writing my proposal on time, writing it a few days to the deadline. One, I was lucky, I got it. The other, I didn't even take note of the time. I knew that it was going to expire, for example, today, but I didn't take note of the time. And yeah, I was working on the proposal and I just decided to check the time. And I realized that it was already over 2 hours ago. So you have to give yourself enough time to do the double checking, and you might want to give your proposal for somebody to review for you. So the next is get assistance if you need one. For example, you need assistance in developing the budget. You're not very good. Maybe one member of your team or maybe somebody that is not in your team, just let the person assist you develop or review the budget. It all depends on what you decide to do and what you agree to do. Obtain feedback from grant management team, peers, or mentors. Many grants allow this. Like I told you, the RSTMH grant I applied for, I was not sure because RSTMH did not state that they are funding health insurance scheme projects. So I wasn't sure. I just messaged them and fortunately they responded, yes, that I can submit the proposal. I said, okay, thank God, because I was contemplating if I should submit health insurance or for some other project. So go after grant of all sizes, especially if you're starting small grant, big grant, doesn't matter, try all of them. Because you're starting, it doesn't mean you can't go for grants of 10,000, just try. So far you're eligible and you're good with every other thing, then you have to try. Last is don't give up. You get a lot of rejections, and even when you are very good and you put all these things in check, you get a rejection. Try to know why you failed. Go back to the proposal and read it again. There are some proposals I go back to read and I'm like, even myself, I would have not funded this kind of thing if I saw it. So I saw the mistakes I made and I learned from them, right? Because most rejections don't come with feedback. They don't tell you why they rejected you. So you have to share with a friend and get the feedback from the person. It's the same thing for scientific articles. When you get rejection from journal, you show a friend and try to get the feedback from the friend, what the person thinks, an expert or mentor in that field. You yourself, you can check it again. It's possible that after 1 month or 2 months or 3 months or 1 year, going back to look at that thing and besides you've advanced in experience and writing, you should see the mistake that you made. So one of the rejections I got last year for a grant I applied for, they told me my methodology was not very good, was not convincing in the awards, it was not convincing. And that was my bad because I kind of assumed, I did not elaborate on the methodology. I assumed that I should kind of make it brief that they will understand. So that's not something you should do. All right, so we are into the last phase now, and this is not going to take so much time because we have to allocate some time for questions. Just want to check the chat box if we have any message. Okay. All right, potential sites of funding sources. Ask your colleagues, ask your mentors. Maybe your abstract has been accepted for presentation in Canada and you don't have a travel scholarship. Ask your mentors, ask colleagues, ask people, where can I see a grant opportunity for a conference? Maybe CPHI in Zambia, just ask people. Or I have a research idea. I want to get funding for my PhD. I want to get funding for my thesis. So you can ask your colleagues. For example, in AuthorAid, we have a Google community platform and people make this kind of request. Oh, I'm a PhD student. I need funding for my PhD project. Where can I get funding opportunities? So sometimes they get people respond to them. If you've not joined the AuthorAid community, I can share the Google group with you and then you can join later. So ask your grant officers in your institutions. And then very important, check the acknowledgement section of papers. This is for research grants, right? If you check some research grants, you see the acknowledgement section, and then you would know if the research was funded. Because more often than not, if a research was funded, the authors will want to acknowledge the funding organization. Check for announcement or call for proposal, email lists, internet searching, and so on and so forth. Now, these are platforms that I follow. And for me, I don't just follow one particular platform. I follow many, and these are not all of them, but these are the ones I would recommend. Opportunity Decks. I subscribe to their newsletters, same with After School Africa, and we always get grant opportunities for whether research or social impact, opportunity for Africa, opportunity for youth. There are many more. So another thing you would do, you would share some of these platforms with us. The ones you have and I don't have, the ones you know and I don't know, you shared with us. I want to join too. And I told you about AuthorAid. AuthorAid Google Group, we have people who regularly, constantly share grant opportunities, and it's something I would really, really recommend. I would like to share the link later because I did not prepare for this session. I'd like to share the link to the Google Group later. And I think we also do that in ACSRM, in Torasif community. We have Torasif community, we have a CSRM community. We share all those opportunities in those WhatsApp platforms. And good news, our WhatsApp platforms are open to anybody, so you can join if you want. If you are interested, I can share these platforms. So there are some websites that they just list funding opportunities, okay? One of them is our AuthorAid. So you can see authorAid.info/funding. You see potential funding sources and Newton's list and so on and so forth. Yes, joining dedicated WhatsApp platforms is very important. I belong to lots of those kind of WhatsApp platforms where they share opportunities. In fact, I think I learned about the RST image. I'm not sure, but I think I saw it in a WhatsApp platform. It happens. Many of the grant opportunities I see on WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp is a very, very important platform if you can make the most of it. You have dedicated Facebook pages, you have Twitter. One of the things we are doing in ACSRM is that aside from sharing opportunities on WhatsApp, we're also sharing opportunities on our Twitter handle, especially for systematic review researchers. So we recently shared a funding opportunity for conducting a systematic review. So you might check our Twitter platform for that. There's also a Twitter platform I recently discovered. It's called Event Central. I think they share mostly conferences, but they also share grants. And then there is also a Twitter platform, another one I discovered. It's called Mesa Malaria. They share mostly malaria grant opportunities. Mesa Malaria, just search them on Twitter and join. I think they share other funding opportunities, but it's mostly for malaria research. So these are some funding opportunities that are available. All right, I like to take a quick recap before we do the questioning. So remember, I told us that writing a grant, a successful grant is difficult because it's very competitive. You are not the only person. So you have to be very, very rugged and dogged, and you have to take your time. So the written document is your grant proposal, and you need a grant for research, social impact, or travel. And there are 3 stages: pre-writing, writing, and post-writing. And for the pre-writing phase, it's important you build a track record, build your writing skills, and have an idea, and you follow necessary platforms. And after the grants call, check if the scope of the call corresponds with what you want, and check if you are eligible, check the deadline, check the requirement, what are they asking you for, and other information. So for the writing phase, what problem are you addressing? How is this true? How is it important? Okay, so what is your idea? Is it innovative? Is it scalable? Can we scale it to other communities? This is something very important. You have to tell us, you have to present proposals that can be scalable. For example, if I say I want to do something in a particular community, it should be something that can be scalable, something that we can do in Oyo State or Lagos, not just Calabar, something we can scale to other states or other African countries or even other LMICs. Funders like to fund those kind of projects because they believe it's not only your community people that needed assistance, right? So they are looking at projects that will be captured in other places. So budget, very important. Take your time. Don't overestimate. You can overestimate slightly, but not too much. You include money for your personal time because time is a resource, okay? So when citing referees, you have to use people that know you and you know them. And very importantly, they will say good things about you. So post-writing phase, you edit, you proofread, and you review, and then you submit. So what are the do's, right? Start early, go for people that match your goals, right? Show that you've done some study and you're thinking critically, show why you need it, don't be too ambitious, be clear and readable, show value for money, and give us a statement of need. Don't exceed what counts, don't leave important information, attention to detail, double check, get assistance, obtain feedback, and never give up. So where to get funding, there are many, and I'm very sure that you know them more than me. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be happy to take your questions now.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Fortune Effiong. That was a very loaded, very detailed session. Thank you so very much. I don't know if anybody is feeling as content. I feel full, like I've eaten right now. Please, if you're feeling that way, just comment. Thank our speaker. He has obviously done a lot of research and also spoken to us from his wealth of experience. I mean, when you know somebody that is very experienced in something, it's obvious from the way they speak, and it's so obvious from his presentation. So please, guys, just appreciate our speaker. He has really done so well. And so if you have a question, let's just get straight into your questions. You can type it in the chat box. You can also raise your hand, and we'll take the questions one after the other. As you raise your hand, we'll call you out, you unmute yourself, and you ask your question. You can just ask the way you want, or if you don't want to speak, you can write it down in the chat box. Also, attendance is still going on. I'm seeing the link around. If you've not signed up for today's attendance, please go ahead and do so. So please, if you have questions, raise your hand. I'll be going through the raised hands. I already have one hand on. I'll be going through the raised hands. If you have any question, just raise your hand, and then we'll call us one by one to ask our questions, please. Marcos, is it Marcos? I'm sorry. Yes, Marcos, please, you can ask your question. Unmute yourself and ask your
Yeah,
question.
sorry, before they
Yeah,
start.
sorry, before they start.
Hello, I was
wondering.
somebody is somebody. Okay, I was wondering if you can, I mean, Princess, you can just put together the questions in the chat box, and then we see which ones we can respond to with the time that we have. We have to wrap up. We don't have to take so much of your time, so we may not attend to all the questions.
We may not attend to all the questions.
All right, sir. All right, I'll do that. So, Marcos, you can unmute yourself and ask your question now.
This period of research, and is one of the, and I'm very grateful. God bless you, the lecturer, the mentor that you have given unto us. My question is something you have at the course of your lecturing. There was something that that really captivated me, sir. For so many opportunity, like in other countries, there are conferences, more especially conferences. There's something you said as a student. There are some, or whichever way. Is there any cooperative or organization that they used to? One can apply if there is any conference in UK, in US, as an undergraduate. Can I also apply? Can you help me with such link or direct me so that I can know to build up my capacity in this aspect, so that whenever there is such conferences I can apply, they can also see the need in order giving me a grant, the opportunity to attend such conferences, because I'm very, 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 very optimistic concerning that, sir. I want to know it, sir. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much for the question. Yes, getting funding for travel grant, to be honest with you, is a challenge for LMICs, right? And you have to rely a lot on your institution or your organization, especially if it aligns with the goal of your organization. For open calls, it's rare. It's rare to see. Let me not say it's rare. It might be rare to me, but I don't know about others. But I have been in this. I've been actively sourcing for grants for a while now. So I think I'm correct if I say it's kind of rare to see. It's kind of rare to see opportunities for travel conferences. So you have to, there are lots of things you can do. Nothing is impossible. Just search online, many ways you can do that. Just search
Network.
Just search, can you hear me?
Mr. Fortune, your voice is breaking, please. Can you just try adjusting your network?
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I think I got a bit disconnected because of network. Can you hear me now?
The whole of your talk, the network interrupted.
Can you hear me now? Just please.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
great. Okay, great. So I was saying, just do an active search on Twitter. Twitter is very important. If you ask me, search on Twitter for, check on Twitter, check online, just Google search for, just open search like travel grant opportunities for West Africans or for Africans, something like that. You can bump into something. And then most of these conferences, they always give scholarships. For example, but let me use the One Young conference, for example. The One Young World conference, there were tons of scholarships, right? And they advertised it on their website. So you have to apply to attend the conference through the scholarship. That's if you cannot sponsor yourself. So you have to check for scholarship opportunities for this conference. Let me take the CPHI conference, for example, Conference of Public Health in Africa. When it's close, you would see lots of, let me not say lots, you see a few scholarship opportunities for the conference. So you have to see this information on time and be able to apply for them. And the third thing I would suggest is just look for philanthropists, anybody that can sponsor you or something like that. That's if your institution cannot sponsor you, or if you cannot get support from, if you cannot see any opportunity online, or if you cannot access any scholarship to attend. I hope I answer your question. Please confirm in the chat box. Next person is Ionix. Please go ahead. Oh, can I just take another question?
Hello. Hello, good evening. Hello. Hello.
I can hear you clearly, please.
Okay. So thank you for your presentation. My question is, in submitting grant proposal, must someone submit it with references like the sources you've consulted, just like other research papers and articles? Is it compulsory? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. I would answer that. It depends. If it's like many of the social impact grants I have submitted, I don't really cite as if I'm citing a research article, because essentially they don't really need that level of citation. But I drop footnotes. I drop a source I consulted as footnotes. I might do in-text, or I drop footnotes, or some I don't even do in-text at all. I just drop footnotes of the sources I consulted. Remember, most of these grant calls, they don't even have opportunity for you to separately put your references. So you have to put all these things in consideration. It's not compulsory, but if you can drop footnotes to show that you consulted some sources, then that will be awesome. So can we take the next question, please?
Wow. Hello, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, please.
More clarification. The footnotes, I don't really get what you are referring
Oh,
to.
okay. Well, footnotes is just like an additional information you put at the end of your paper, or your document, or a page, or an article that you're writing, whatever. So you can just search online footnotes, and then you see samples of what it looks like. So if you're including a citation as footnote, then you're just putting that. You see where this my LinkedIn, Facebook, this my handles are. Just put it as small information below that page. So the person will understand that, or at the end of that article, the person will understand that these are the sources that you consulted.
All right, thank you.
All right. I think it's got safe. You want to ask something?
Hello, Princess. Are you there? I also have a question. I don't know if I can just go ahead. Let me just
Yes,
go ahead.
please. Yes, please. Go ahead, please.
First, thank you so much. The session was very impactful. I think this is the most interactive session I've had so far. Um,
Thank you. I
my
appreciate
question.
it.
Yeah. You are obviously a beneficiary and you won the AutoAid research grant. Funny enough, that's something that me and my friend Daniel is here. With some other friends, he wanted to apply for that too, but somehow we got discouraged and something happened, but we didn't end up applying though. So I was wondering, prior to that application, was it something you were looking forward to applying? Like, how far back were you planning for this, and what were the things that you considered? And then, and did you have like prior expertise? Was it that you had publications on ground, or you applied for a grant before then, or something? Or was it your first time? I would like to know. Maybe you can just share your story briefly with me. Like, I really want to know since we have a little bit time.
Okay, no problem. But please just help me. If there's any question in the chat box, put it together. I would like to respond to one or two more questions. For AuthorAid, like I told us, I got AuthorAid grant. It was not really for a research project. It was for my social impact initiative. Like I said, my social impact project or activities is essentially, one of them is what I'm doing now, building capacity, mentorship in research. So I do those things through my organization. So when the AuthorAid grant call came, I was, and still is the director for research of Torasif. So it tells you already that I had lots of experience and I did lots and lots of projects for in that field, right? The project was for building research capacity. So I had the experience already through Torasif, and that already gave me an edge. And then I was leading another systematic review organization, and that's what my funders were interested in. They were interested in the systematic review organization. So they were very specific. They wanted us to launch the systematic review organization. So you see, I had experience in these kind of things, training, building capacity, research, all those kind of things through my old organization. And I was running an organization that they were particularly interested in funding. So that was quite kind of easy. And I kind of had told them about this organization even before the grant call. So in fact, one of them messaged me about the grant call. I think I saw it before then, or I did not see it before then. I'm not sure, but I remember one of them messaged me and tried to ask a few questions about the organization, and that was how it happened. And then I with my team, we prepared a proposal and then we submitted. We were not the only ones that were funded, so it was still competitive. We had to do good work, and we completed our project. We submitted the reports. Yeah, so that is how it was for AuthorAid.
Okay, thank you very much for that. One last question.
Okay.
I've checked the chat session. There is no question. If you still have your questions, you can drop them. As an undergraduate, most of us here are undergraduates, and I'm looking forward to my final year project. And if I could get funds for that, that
Okay.
will help me so much. So
Yeah.
it's something I'm looking forward to do, like to try if I see any opportunity. So what would be your advice? What should I do to put me in a good position?
I think that's a very, very important one. If you can get grant for your undergraduate project, it's a very good one. Yes, you have to look for, funding opportunity. And I think I shared one before for those that are close to, for those that are already in my network. I think I shared it on my LinkedIn and almost all the WhatsApp platforms, whether it's Torasi or CSRM, it was Sigma. Sigma specifically, they were funding undergraduate projects and funding. Yes, okay. Fortunately, I think there is another call. The Sigma was 2 call. One was ending by March or April, something like that, and then the other is ending by August. So what you can do, you can message me later. I will search for the link. I will share it with you.
Right now.
Yes, yeah, I think it's the right time. So one of the things you will emphasize in your proposal, you have to state clearly that this is your undergraduate project. It shows urgency, and that's one of the things that will give you an edge. So aside from Sigma, you just have to search for grants and see if the scope is favorable for you.
Okay. Thank you very much. In fact, I left you a message already. I'll be in touch with you. I'll check it out and I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Somebody's hand up. Okay, I think he asked his question already.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Before I leave the platform for God Safe and Princess, I want to thank everybody that has joined. I'm incredibly honored to be here, and it's a pleasure. This is what I like. So I'm always happy anytime I speak to other early career researchers and share knowledge and learn from them too. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you participated actively from the beginning of this webinar series. I think this is day 7, and then you've been very committed, and kudos to you for all your hard work, patience, and commitment. I am very sure that it will definitely pay off. So I would share my slide. I usually upload my slides on SlideShare. So I would share it, and then I think GodSafe or any of the organizers will share the link to the recordings too, so you can go through it anytime you want. So as a final advice, just get somebody who is available to collaborate with you. You can have like an accountability partner, because research, grant writing, they are not easy, they are stressful mentally and otherwise. So you can have an accountability partner, somebody you will be applying grants with, somebody you'll be writing papers. Not really paper, I'm talking about grants writing. So I'm not really interested in your papers. Have somebody you're applying grants together with, and the person should sort of have a skill that you don't have, so that maybe the person is somebody that is meticulous, or a person that is more hardworking than you, or the person is better in writing than you, something like that. Let it be skills that sort of complement. So it's something that you have to really put into consideration. It will really help you. It will give you the mental energy that you need to always push forward, because truly the key for grant is keep going. I can tell you the number of rejections I've gotten this year, but I'll keep that for next time. So even when I'm good in writing and I have these experiences, I still get lots of rejections. So you get lots of rejections. Just when you get your rejection, just remember this: pick up your proposal and submit for some other thing, for similar something. See what you can modify, see what you not do well, and submit for some other thing. Definitely one day, life is not going to deny you. You will definitely get your breakthrough. Thank you very much.
And before you leave,
and good night.
Before you leave, for the platform, the link for some of the platforms that you said you drop, I don't know if you can send that to me on WhatsApp, like to ACSRM, to Dorasive, and any other platform that you can. Send, even for AutoAid, the group.
All
If you can help me send that, I'll send it to you. And before you leave, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the national president. Maybe you can just say a vote of thanks. National President, Sir Abba Tebe.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, our presenter. Good evening, everyone. That's been very wonderful. I must say we've learned so much from your presentation, sir. We pray that God will continue to bless and enrich you, to see that you excel in all that you do. This session is mind-blowing, And I believe all of us here present today have learned something. So we're grateful and we say thank you for the sacrifice, knowledge, and everything. I deeply appreciate you on behalf of Nimesa Nation. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the feedbacks, the ones you're sending on WhatsApp too. Thank you, I appreciate them. I don't know if
All
you
right.
have a feedback form, but you can still share your feedback in the feedback form. I don't know, sorry. If you don't have it, then it's fine, there's no problem.
Okay. I think with that, we have come to the end of this session, and tomorrow will be the final day.